A merchant and his donkey. One beautiful spring morning, a merchant loaded his donkey with bags of salt to go to the market in order to sell them. The merchant and his donkey were walking along together. They had not walked far when they reached a river on the road. Unfortunately, the donkey slipped and fell into the river and noticed that the bags of salt loaded on his back became lighter. There was nothing the merchant could do except return home, where he loaded his donkey with more bags of salt. As they reached the slippery riverbank, now deliberately, the donkey fell into the river and wasted all the bags of salt on its back again. The merchant quickly discovered the donkey's trick. He then returned home again, but reloaded his donkey with bags of sponges. The foolish, tricky donkey again set on its way. On reaching the river, he again fell into the water. But instead of the load becoming lighter, it became heavier. The merchant laughed at him and said, "You foolish donkey, your trick had been discovered. You should know that. Those who are too clever sometimes overreach themselves." Butterfly and cocoon. A man found a cocoon of a butterfly. One day, a small opening appeared. He sat and watched the butterfly for several hours as it struggled to force its body through that little hole. Then it seemed to stop making any progress. It appeared as if it had gotten as far as it could, and it could go no farther. Then the man decided to help the butterfly, so he took a pair of scissors and snipped off the remaining bit of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged easily, but it had a swollen body and small, shriveled wings. The man continued to watch the butterfly because he expected that at any moment the wings would enlarge and expand to be able to support the body, which would contract in time. Neither happened. In fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around with a swollen body and shriveled wings. It never was able to fly. What this man in his kindness and haste did not understand was that the restricting cocoon and the struggle required for the butterfly to get through the tiny opening were nature's way of forcing fluid from the body of the butterfly into its wings so that it would be ready for flight once it achieved its freedom from the cocoon. Sometimes struggles are exactly what we need in our life. If nature allowed us to go through our life without any obstacles, it would cripple us. We would not be as strong as what we could have been, and we could never fly. Cats and roosters. Once upon a time in Africa, roosters ruled cats. The cats worked hard all day, and at night they had to bring all they had gathered for the roosters. The king of the roosters would take all the food for himself and for the other roosters. The roosters loved to eat ants. Thus, every cat had a purse hung round its neck, which it filled with ants for the king of the roosters. The cats did not like the situation. They wanted to rid themselves of the king so that the food they gathered through hard work and great difficulty would be their own, but they were afraid of the roosters. The roosters had told the cats that roosters' combs were made out of fire and that the fire of their combs would burn anyone who disobeyed them. The cats believed them and therefore worked from early morning until night for the roosters. One night, the fire on the house of Mrs. Cat went out. She told her kitten, Fluffy, to bring some fire from Mr. Rooster's house. When Fluffy went into the house of the rooster, she saw that Mr. Rooster was fast asleep, his stomach swollen with the ants he had eaten. The kitten was afraid to wake the rooster, so she returned home empty-handed and told her mother what had happened. Mrs. Cat said, "Now that the rooster is asleep, gather some dry twigs and place them near his comb. As soon as the twigs catch fire, bring them home." Fluffy gathered some dry twigs and took them to the rooster's house. He was still asleep. Fluffy fearfully put the dry twigs near the rooster's comb, but it was no use. The twigs did not catch fire. Fluffy rubbed the twigs against the rooster's comb again, but it was no use, they would not catch fire. Fluffy returned home without any fire and told her mother, "The roost's comb does not set twigs on fire." Mrs. Cat answered, "Why can't you do anything right? Come with me, I'll show you how to make fire with the rooster's comb." So together they went to the house of Mr. Rooster. He was still asleep. Mrs. Cat put the twigs as near to the rooster's comb as she could, but the twigs did not catch fire. Then, shaking with fear, she put her paw near the rooster's comb and gently touched it. To her surprise, the comb was not hot, it was very cold, and it was just red-colored. As soon as Mrs. Cat realized that the roosters had lied to the cats about their combs, she joyfully went out and told the other cats about the roosters' tricks. From that day on, the cats no longer worked for the roosters. At first, the king of the roosters became very angry and said to the cats, "I will burn all of your houses if you do not work for me." But the cats said, "Your comb is not made of fire. It is just the color of fire. We touched it when you were asleep. You lied to us." When the king of the roosters found out that the cats knew that he had lied to them, he ran away. Now, whenever roosters see a cat, they scurry away, because to this very day, they are afraid of cats.